Let me tell you something that happens more often than you think. Someone asks you a simple question. So, what do you do at work?
Sounds like an easy question, right?
Yes, but in that moment, your mind suddenly goes blank.
Exactly. You know your job, you do it every day, but explaining it feels difficult.
And then you say something like, I work in an office.
Yeah, or I do some tasks.
And deep inside, you feel like that's not what I really do.
Right, it feels incomplete, like you didn't express yourself properly.
I remember someone once said, I do so much work every day, but when I explain it in English, it sounds like I do nothing.
That hits hard.
Because it's not about ability, it's about expression.
Yes, you're not confused about your work, you're just unsure how to say it.
And that small gap can affect your confidence.
Especially in important moments like meetings or interviews.
Exactly. You start thinking, what if I say it wrong?
Or what if they don't understand me?
And slowly, you start avoiding the question itself.
That's true. You give short answers just to move on quickly.
But here's something important.
You don't need big words to explain your work.
You don't need perfect grammar either.
You just need simple, clear sentences.
That actually show what you do every day.
And once you learn that, everything changes.
You start speaking with more clarity,
And people start understanding you better.
which automatically makes you feel more confident.
Exactly. It's a small shift, but a powerful one.
So today, we're going to talk about something very practical.
How to talk about your responsibilities at work in a simple and natural way.
Not complicated, not confusing, just real and clear.
So the next time someone asks you that question,
You won't feel stuck.
you'll know exactly what to say.
You know, the more I think about it, this is not really a language problem.
What do you mean?
I mean, people already know what they do every day. They don't need to learn their job again.
That's true. They already understand their responsibilities very well.
Exactly. But when it comes to putting it into words, that's where things feel difficult.
Yeah, it's like everything is clear in your mind, but the moment you try to say it, it becomes confusing.
And then you start thinking too much.
Should I use this word? Is this correct? Does this sound professional?
And in that moment, you lose your natural flow.
Exactly. You stop sounding like yourself.
And that's where the problem really begins.
Because now you're not communicating, you're overthinking.
That's such a powerful point.
I've seen this happen in very normal situations too.
Like what?
Like when someone new joins a team and people casually ask, so what do you usually handle?
Yes, that's a very common question.
And instead of answering naturally, people suddenly become very formal or very quiet.
Or they give a very short answer and stop there.
Exactly. Something like, I handle some tasks.
Which doesn't really tell anything meaningful.
Right, the other person is still confused.
And then the conversation doesn't move forward.
That's true, it just ends there.
But imagine if the same answer was a little clearer.
Like, I handle emails, talk to clients, and prepare reports.
That already sounds more real.
Yes, and it opens the door for more conversation.
Exactly. The other person can now respond, ask questions, or relate to it.
And suddenly, everything feels more natural.
You know what I've realized?
What?
I mean, communication is not about sounding impressive.
It's about being understood.
Yes, and once you focus on that, everything becomes easier.
You stop chasing perfect sentences,
And you start using simple, honest ones.
which actually work better in real life.
Exactly. And that's what we're going to explore today. how to explain what you do in a way that feels natural, clear, and confident. So, David, let's make this real for a moment. Imagine I just met you and I ask you, so, what do you do?
Okay. Honestly, earlier I would have said something very simple, like I work in an office.
Yeah, that sounds safe, but it doesn't really say much.
Exactly. It feels like you answered the question, but not really.
So, what would you say now?
Now I try to explain it a little more clearly. I'd say I work as a project manager and I handle different projects with my team.
That already sounds better. I can understand your role now.
Yeah, but even that took me time to get comfortable with.
What made the difference for you?
I stopped trying to sound perfect and I started thinking, what do I actually do every day?
That's a powerful shift.
Yeah, so instead of thinking about English, I started thinking about my work.
And then you just described it in simple words.
Exactly. Like, I plan tasks, talk to my team, and make sure everything is completed on time.
That sounds natural and very clear.
Yes, and the best part is, it feels like I'm just talking, not performing.
That's important because the moment you feel like you're performing, you get nervous.
Exactly. And then your sentences become unnatural.
You start hesitating or overthinking.
Yes, and sometimes you even forget simple words.
That happens to so many people.
But when you keep it simple, everything flows better,
And the other person understands you easily.
which makes you feel more relaxed.
And then your confidence increases automatically.
Exactly. It's like a chain reaction.
You know what I find interesting?
What?
When someone explains their work clearly, people listen more carefully.
That's true. Clear communication always stands out.
And it doesn't require big vocabulary.
Just honest and simple sentences.
I like that. Honest and simple.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, people just want to understand what you do.
Not how complicated your English is.
Exactly. Clarity over complexity.
That's such an important idea. You know, while we're talking about this, I'm thinking about something.
What's that?
There are so many moments in daily life where this question comes up naturally.
Yeah, not just interviews, even casual situations.
Exactly, like meeting someone new or even talking to a friend of a friend.
Or when someone simply asks, "So, what keeps you busy these days?"
Yes, and that question sounds simple, but it can catch you off guard.
Because you don't always expect it.
And in that moment, you don't have time to prepare.
So, whatever comes out quickly.
And that's when you realize how comfortable you are with expressing it.
That's true. It shows your natural level of confidence.
I think everyone has had that moment where they felt, I could have explained that better.
Oh, yes, many times.
You walk away from the conversation and think,
I should have said this instead.
exactly, that afterthought feeling.
And it stays in your mind for a while.
But what's interesting is the answer is already inside you.
You just need a simple way to express it.
Yes, not perfect, just clear.
And once you practice that a little,
Those awkward moments start disappearing
and you begin to respond more naturally,
without overthinking every word
which makes the conversation feel smoother.
and more real.
You know what I've noticed?
What?
When you feel comfortable explaining your work, you also feel more confident talking about other things.
That's so true. It builds overall confidence.
Because now you trust your ability to express yourself.
And that changes everything.
It really does.
So, David, let's take a very common situation. Someone asks you, what do you do at work?
Okay, let's start with a basic answer. I work in sales.
Right. That's clear, but it feels incomplete.
Yeah, it tells the field, but not the actual work.
So how can we make it better without making it complicated?
Maybe by adding one or two simple details, like I work in sales and I talk to customers and help them choose products.
That already sounds much better. I can picture what you do.
Exactly. It's still simple, but now it has meaning.
Let's try another one. What if someone says, I work in HR?
That's very common, but again, it's too general.
So how can we improve it?
They could say, I work in HR and I help with hiring people and managing employee records.
That sounds clear and natural.
Yes, and it doesn't feel difficult to say.
I like that. It's simple but complete.
Exactly. Just one extra sentence can change everything.
Let's take one more example. I work in IT.
That's very broad.
Yes, it could mean many things.
So a better version could be, I work in IT and I fix technical issues and support the team.
That's much clearer.
Yeah, now the other person understands your role.
And they can even ask follow-up questions.
Exactly. That's how real interaction begins.
You know what I'm noticing here?
What?
The improvement is not about difficult words.
It's about adding small, meaningful details.
Yes, just explaining what you actually do.
And keeping it simple.
That makes it easier to remember, too.
And easier to say naturally.
I think this removes a lot of pressure.
Definitely, you don't need to prepare a long answer.
Just 1 to 2 clear sentences are enough.
And that's what makes it powerful.
Simple, clear, and real.
That's the goal.
You know, while we're talking about this, I keep thinking about the small mistakes people make without even realizing.
Yeah, not big mistakes, but small things that change how your answer sounds.
Exactly, like giving an answer that's too short.
Yes, something like, I do office work.
And when you hear that, you feel like, okay, but what exactly?
Right, it doesn't create a clear picture.
And the conversation just stops there.
Yeah, there's nothing to respond to.
Another thing I've noticed, people sometimes stop after one word.
Like sales.
Yes, and then silence.
That silence feels awkward.
It puts pressure on the other person to continue.
And sometimes they don't know what to ask next.
Exactly. So the moment just fades away.
I've also seen something else.
What?
People try to sound too formal suddenly.
Yes, like switching their tone completely.
They say something like, I am responsible for the execution of organizational processes.
And it sounds unnatural, like they're reading something.
Exactly. It doesn't feel like real communication.
And sometimes even they don't feel comfortable saying it.
That's true. You can hear the hesitation in their voice.
Another common thing, overthinking grammar.
Yes, should I say this or that?
And in that moment, you pause too much.
Which breaks your flow.
And then even a simple sentence feels difficult.
Exactly.
You know what I feel?
What?
Most of these problems are not about ability.
They're about pressure.
Yes, the pressure to sound perfect.
And that pressure makes things worse.
But the moment you let that go,
Everything becomes easier.
you speak more naturally.
And your sentences become clearer.
That's such a simple shift, but it changes everything. You know, something else plays a big role here. Not just what you say, but how you say it.
You mean the tone?
Exactly. The same idea can sound very different depending on the situation.
That's true. Like talking to a friend versus talking in a meeting.
Yes, the message is the same, but the way you express it changes.
Let's take a simple example. If someone asks casually, so what do you do?
You might say, I work in marketing and I create content for social media.
That sounds relaxed and natural.
Now imagine the same question in a more professional setting.
Maybe in a meeting or with someone senior.
Exactly. Then you might say, I work in marketing and I'm responsible for creating and managing social media content.
That sounds a bit more structured.
Yes, but still simple.
And not too complicated.
That's important. You don't need to suddenly change your personality.
Just adjust your tone slightly.
Right. Another example, casually, you might say, I talk to clients and solve their problems.
And in a professional setting, I communicate with clients and help resolve their issues.
Same meaning, just a small shift in words.
And it sounds more polished.
But still natural.
Exactly, that's the balance.
You know what I like about this?
What?
You don't need two completely different answers.
Just small adjustments.
Yes, that makes it easier to remember.
And easier to use in real situations.
I think many people feel they need perfect professional English.
But in reality, simple and clear works everywhere.
Exactly. Even in professional spaces, clarity matters more than complexity.
And confidence comes from being comfortable with your words.
Not from using difficult vocabulary.
That's a very important point.
Okay, let's imagine something real. You're sitting in an interview room,
Already feeling a little nervous.
and the interviewer looks at you and asks, So, can you tell me about your responsibilities?
Yeah, that moment feels very important.
What would you say?
Earlier, I might have said something like, I work in operations.
That sounds too short for that situation.
Exactly, it doesn't show much.
So, let's try a better version.
Okay, I could say, I work in operations and I manage daily tasks, coordinate with teams, and make sure everything runs smoothly.
That sounds clear and confident.
Yeah, and it still feels simple.
Now imagine another situation. You meet someone at a casual event.
Like a small gathering or a meetup.
Yes, and someone asks, So, what do you do?
In that case, I'd keep it relaxed.
What would you say?
I work in operations. I mostly handle daily tasks and work with different teams.
That sounds natural and easy.
Yeah, it feels like a normal conversation.
Let's try one more situation. You're talking to a colleague for the first time.
Okay, that's somewhere in between formal and casual.
Exactly. What would you say?
I work in operations and I coordinate with teams and manage daily workflows.
That sounds balanced. Not too formal, not too casual.
And very clear.
Yeah, I think that's the key.
You know what I like about this?
What?
You don't need two completely different answers.
Just small adjustments.
Yes, that makes it easier to remember.
And easier to use in real situations.
I think many people feel they need perfect professional English.
But in reality, simple and clear works everywhere.
Exactly. Even in professional spaces, clarity matters more than complexity.
And confidence comes from being comfortable with your words, not from using difficult vocabulary.
That's a very important point.
Okay, let's imagine something real. You're sitting in an interview room,
Already feeling a little nervous.
and the interviewer looks at you and asks, So, can you tell me about your responsibilities?
Yeah, that moment feels very important.
What would you say?
Earlier, I might have said something like, I work in operations.
That sounds too short for that situation.
Exactly, it doesn't show much.
So, let's try a better version.
Okay, I could say, I work in operations and I manage daily tasks, coordinate with teams, and make sure everything runs smoothly.
That sounds clear and confident.
Yeah, and it still feels simple.
Now imagine another situation. You meet someone at a casual event.
Like a small gathering or a meetup.
Yes, and someone asks, So, what do you do?
In that case, I'd keep it relaxed.
What would you say?
I work in operations. I mostly handle daily tasks and work with different teams.
That sounds natural and easy.
Yeah, it feels like a normal conversation.
Let's try one more situation. You're talking to a colleague for the first time.
Okay, that's somewhere in between formal and casual.
Exactly. What would you say?
I work in operations and I coordinate with teams and manage daily workflows.
That sounds balanced. Not too formal, not too casual.
And very clear.
Yeah, I think that's the key.
You know what I like about this?
What?
You don't need two completely different answers.
Just small adjustments.
Yes, that makes it easier to remember.
And easier to use in real situations.
I think many people feel they need perfect professional English.
But in reality, simple and clear works everywhere.
Exactly. Even in professional spaces, clarity matters more than complexity.
And confidence comes from being comfortable with your words, not from using difficult vocabulary.
That's a very important point.
Okay, let's imagine something real. You're sitting in an interview room,
Already feeling a little nervous.
and the interviewer looks at you and asks, "So, can you tell me about your responsibilities?"
Yeah, that moment feels very important.
What would you say?
Earlier, I might have said something like, I work in operations.
That sounds too short for that situation.
Exactly, it doesn't show much.
So, let's try a better version.
Okay, I could say, I work in operations and I manage daily tasks, coordinate with teams, and make sure everything runs smoothly.
That sounds clear and confident.
Yeah, and it still feels simple.
Now imagine another situation. You meet someone at a casual event.
Like a small gathering or a meetup.
Yes, and someone asks, "So, what do you do?"
In that case, I'd keep it relaxed.
What would you say?
I work in operations. I mostly handle daily tasks and work with different teams.
That sounds natural and easy.
Yeah, it feels like a normal conversation.
Let's try one more situation. You're talking to a colleague for the first time.
Okay, that's somewhere in between formal and casual.
Exactly. What would you say?
I work in operations and I coordinate with teams and manage daily workflows.
That sounds balanced. Not too formal, not too casual.
And very clear.
Yeah, I think that's the key.
You know what I like about this?
What?
You don't need two completely different answers.
Just small adjustments.
Yes, that makes it easier to remember.
And easier to use in real situations.
I think many people feel they need perfect professional English.
But in reality, simple and clear works everywhere.
Exactly. Even in professional spaces, clarity matters more than complexity.
And confidence comes from being comfortable with your words, not from using difficult vocabulary.
That's a very important point.
You know, something else stood out to me while we were talking.
What was that?
The way the sentences were built. They were very simple, but they sounded complete.
Yeah, I noticed that too. Nothing complicated, but everything felt clear.
Like when you said, "I manage a team."
Right, that's probably the simplest way to say it.
And then you added, "I coordinate with different teams."
Yeah, just adding one more idea made the sentence stronger.
Exactly. It's like building step by step.
First one clear idea, then another,
And suddenly, your answer feels complete.
without making it long or complicated.
I think many people feel they need long sentences to sound better.
But long sentences can actually make things confusing.
Yes, especially when you're not comfortable with them.
You start losing track of what you're saying.
And then the sentence becomes unclear.
Exactly. That's why short and clear works better.
Like, "I handle customer calls."
Then you can add, "and I solve their issues."
Two simple parts, but together they sound strong.
Yes, it feels natural when you say it.
Another thing I noticed, you used "and" a lot,
Yeah, it helps connect ideas easily.
without making the sentence complicated.
Exactly. It keeps the flow smooth.
I think this is the easiest way to speak clearly.
One idea, then another, connected naturally,
And you don't have to stop and think too much.
which makes you sound more confident.
That's such a simple trick.
Yes, but very effective.
You know, at this point, it's not just about understanding, it's about actually saying it out loud.
Yeah, because speaking is a different experience.
Exactly. Let's imagine someone asks you right now, what do you do at work?
Okay, I'll try to answer naturally.
Go ahead. Don't overthink it.
All right. I manage projects, coordinate with my team, and make sure everything is completed on time.
That sounded very natural. You didn't pause too much.
Yeah, I just followed the flow we've been using.
That's the idea. Now let's try a slightly different one.
Okay.
Imagine you work in customer support. How would you say it?
I handle customer calls, listen to their problems, and help them find solutions.
Nice. That was very clear.
It feels easier when I think in simple steps.
Exactly. Now, one more. Let's make it shorter and casual.
All right.
Someone asks you in a relaxed setting. What do you say?
I work in customer support. I talk to customers and help solve their issues.
That sounds very natural.
Yeah, not too formal, not too simple either.
Perfect balance.
I think repeating this a few times helps a lot.
Yes, because your brain starts getting used to the patterns.
And then you don't have to think too much while speaking.
It becomes automatic.
Exactly. That's what makes it smooth.
You know what's interesting?
What?
The more you speak simple sentences, the more confident you feel.
That's true. It removes hesitation.
And hesitation is what usually blocks fluency.
Yes, not lack of knowledge, but lack of confidence.
That's a powerful realization.
It really is.
Let's pause for a moment and imagine a real situation again.
Okay, what kind of situation?
Imagine you're at a small gathering and someone casually asks, "So what exactly do you do?"
That happens a lot in real life.
Yes, and this time I'll say a sentence. Listen carefully.
All right, I'm listening.
I work in operations and I manage daily tasks, coordinate with my team, and make sure everything runs smoothly.
Okay, that was clear and natural.
Now imagine you heard that in a real conversation.
I would probably respond with a follow-up question.
Like what?
Maybe, that sounds interesting. What kind of tasks do you usually handle?
Perfect. That keeps the conversation going.
Yes, because the answer was clear enough to build on.
Exactly. Now let's try another one.
All right.
Listen carefully again. I work in marketing and I create content for social media and help promote products online.
Got it.
Now, if someone said that to you, what would you think?
I'd think their role is creative and involves communication.
Yes, and you immediately understand their job.
That's the power of a clear explanation.
Exactly. It makes the conversation smooth.
And it avoids confusion.
Now, one more time. Listen carefully.
Okay.
I work in IT, and I support the team by fixing technical issues and helping with system-related problems.
That was very clear again.
Yes, simple, structured, and easy to understand.
I noticed something. All these sentences follow a similar pattern.
Yes, introduce your role, then explain what you do, and maybe add one more detail.
That makes it consistent and easy to remember.
Exactly. And once you get used to this pattern,
You can use it in many different situations.
without preparing anything zarane.
It just comes naturally.
So, if we look back at everything we discussed today, one idea stands out the most.
Yes, the ability to explain your work clearly using simple sentences.
Exactly. It's not about using complex words or long explanations.
It's about being clear, natural, and easy to understand.
We also saw how small additions can make a big difference.
Like adding one or two details to a basic answer.
For example, instead of saying, "I work in an office,"
You can say, I handle emails, manage tasks, and communicate with clients.
that one change completely improves the clarity.
Yes, it gives a full picture of what you do.
We also noticed that short and simple sentences often work better than long and complicated ones.
Because they are easier to say and easier to understand.
And tone also matters depending on the situation.
Casual and everyday talk, a bit more structured in professional settings.
But in both cases, clarity stays the same.
Exactly. That's the constant.
We also talked about common patterns like I manage, I handle, and I coordinate.
These simple verbs help describe responsibilities in a natural way.
And once you get comfortable with them,
You can use them in many different situations without thinking too much.
another important idea was confidence.
Yes, confidence doesn't come from perfect sentences,
It comes from expressing your thoughts clearly.
even if the language is simple,
And when your explanation is clear, people understand you better.
which makes communication smoother overall.
So in the end, it all comes down to this simple idea.
Speak clearly, keep it simple, and explain what you actually do.
That's all you need to make a strong impression. And now, it's your turn.
Yes, we'd really like to hear from you.
Think about your own work and how you would describe it in simple English.
Try to say it in 1 or 2 clear sentences.
For example, I manage projects and coordinate with my team.
Or I handle customer calls and help solve their issues.
Writing it down can really help you organize your thoughts.
And it's a great way to practice expressing yourself.
If you feel comfortable, share your sentence in the comments.
Reading your examples will help others too.
And remember, you don't need perfect English.
You just need clear and simple communication.
That's what truly makes a difference in real life.
And the more you practice, the more natural it becomes.
If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to like this video.
And share it with someone who wants to improve their English.
Subscribe to English with Lisaa for more real-life English conversations.
We'll see you in the next episode.
Until then, keep practicing, keep speaking, and keep improving. Bye, everyone. Bye.